I'm going to turn it over to Brian Moore from the OCAP team at CARB, who is going to give us a little bit of an overview of the blueprint and what Deldy said, right? Helping us to understand how this whole process works. Brian.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Lamika. A lot of pressure right now, but I'll try to answer a lot of questions. So again, my name is Brian Moore, and I'm a manager in the Office of Community Air Protection. And before I start, I just want to make two comments about those testimonials that I thought were extremely informative. Is that Moses is great for Paramount, but I also wanted to say that Mary and Margot are pretty awesome with all the work they're doing in Stockton, as I've seen. So Stockton is also very lucky to have the both of you. And another thing that got me thinking is that I grew up in Sacramento, and I-5 was actually in our backyard growing up as a kid. And both my brother and I are asthmatics. And I remember my parents being concerned about the noise and actually the danger of the cars. It was before sound walls. And my brother and I would sometimes walk up there, to play around. But as I got older, I found myself drawn to studying lung health. And I think it was that experience of seeing when you have asthma, you think about breathing more than maybe, most people. So I definitely connected with that. But yeah, with that, I'll go ahead and get started. So what I'm going to do is give a brief introduction to the Community Air Protection Program and the program's guidance document, which we also call the Blueprint. So to start off, on the left side of this graphic are the 3 bills that create the legal framework for the program. And then after engaging with community members and agency partners, this framework is then translated into implementation guidance by CARB, as shown on the right side as the program blueprint. The original blueprint was approved in 2018, and we are now in the process of updating the blueprint by September 2023. And this workshop is one critical component of this revision process. So part of the legal requirements of the program are updating the blueprint every 5 years. And this September is that 5-year mark. Our main goal now is to incorporate all the lessons learned from the beginning of the program and to support more communities than the current model is capable of. On the right side of the slide, we have highlighted all the components of the draft blueprint, known as Blueprint 2.0. The dark blue represents components carried over from the first edition. The light blue represents new concepts, and the 3 highlighted in gold are the proposed new pathways to support more communities more efficiently. And we will talk about these in detail later on. So why do we need to reimagine this program to focus on new approaches? This figure here shows the funding trend for implementation monies allocated by the legislature to both CARB, which is the green line, and air districts, the yellow line. Budget bills call out the total amount of funds for air districts each year to run the program. So this is for paying staff, purchasing and maintaining air quality monitoring equipment, contracts for third-party facilitation, language services, and stipends for community steering committee members. Each community selected into the program, and we are now at 19, represent a multi-year commitment for both CARB and the air districts. Even the communities that we selected in the first year of the program are still working on completing their plans. As new communities have been added each year, funding remains relatively the same. And as you look at this figure, although the air district budget did get a one-time increase in 22-23, these additional funds were used to bring 2 more communities into our traditional community emissions reduction plan pathway. And although another additional $10 million is proposed for 23-24, the governor has yet to sign the budget. The approach CARB put forward in the 2018 blueprint, so our first blueprint, is resource intensive and was always meant to create opportunities to support more communities. We are now at the point where we need to transition to other models of engagement that preserve community empowerment, but that distribute limited resources more equitably. So as mentioned, the program is always intended to allow us to learn from the initial selected communities and then apply those strategies in others. The focus of Draft Blueprint 2.0 is to outline pathways to bring more resources to a larger number of communities, identifying priority areas that have been consistently nominated, but not yet selected for collective government action. And so this is where those 65 communities come in. So CARB staff, with the help of air districts and then also with community self-nominations over the last 5 years, have developed a list of 65 communities where we are proposing to begin these expanded efforts. We are committing to engage with representatives of the 65 plus places to better understand air quality needs, and in partnership with other agencies, apply some of these new pathways. With this framing in mind, let's take a look at what's included in the draft Blueprint 2.0. So Blueprint 2.0, as of now, is composed of two parts. Part one, represented here on the left side of the figure, details a statewide strategy to reduce emissions and exposure to harmful air pollutants. Part one also outlines the obligations for both the California Air Resources Board and the air districts as mandated by state and federal law. Part two, shown here on the right, offers guidance for air districts, communities, affected industries, and other potential partners on how to implement each component of the statewide strategy. And it is aimed at two groups. So that kind of left blue section is aimed at the current selected communities with a focus on improvements to ensure successful completion of their plans and process. And then on the right side, these are the 65 plus places. We wanted to detail new pathways to support more communities. And Deldy also mentioned the People's Blueprint earlier and how it kind of informs this revision. So AB 617 mandates that CARB to involve a diverse range of groups in the development of the blueprint. It is one of the few California laws that explicitly includes environmental justice organizations and requires government agencies to consult with them when developing strategies. In accordance with this requirement, CARB established the AB 617 consultation group in January 2018, and as a platform for engaging with these groups and ensuring their active participation and representation. In the fall of 2020, a subgroup of the consultation group developed the People's Blueprint to share community-based and environmental justice perspectives. This led to the release of the People's Blueprint in September 2021. The key themes from the consultation group discussions on the People's Blueprint influenced the development of Blueprint 2.0 as highlighted on the slide. In this draft, our main focus was to incorporate equity and environmental justice principles into all of our actions, enhance community steering committee guidance, and introduce transparency and accountability mechanisms. So if we focus on part one, this part of the document defines the problem of environmental injustice, provides guiding principles, and presents a set of coordinated actions to achieve the program goals in the context of CARB's vision for racial equity and environmental justice. Part one also provides some history and context, including how structural racism has resulted in disproportionate impacts of poor air quality, establishes guiding principles based on lessons learned, and commits CARB to a set of goals and priority actions over the next 5 years. Finally, part one also recommits CARB and air districts to the requirements contained in AB 617, affirms existing authorities to ensure non-discrimination, and provides key actions to bring benefits to more communities. So these draft guiding principles here are informed by what CARB staff, communities, air districts, and other partners have identified since the program was launched in 2017. The first principle prioritizes fairness by considering the unequal effects of all decisions before making them by applying a racial equity lens. The draft blueprint actively promotes power sharing through three key actions. One, supporting self-governance in the community steering committees to ensure community decision-making. Two, improving agency engagement with communities by strengthening their capacity to take action. And three, fostering a culture of learning through peer-to-peer networks and mentoring, promoting the exchange of expertise and ideas. And the third guiding principle aims to be transparent and accountable by openly communicating how funding resources are used and by evaluating the progress and challenges of the program, as well as making air quality information readily available to the public. This enables all to access and understand air quality data and learn about different technologies that can help improve air quality. So to make sure that these guiding principles positively impact program development, we have drafted these 7 program goals containing specific actions that we commit to take over the next 5 years. These goals center on non-discrimination laws and protection, successful completion of the current community emission reduction plans, and focusing on expanding program benefits to the more communities, guided by the list of 65 plus places that we have compiled over the first 5 years of the program. And with that, I guess I can hand it back over to Lamika for a breakout session.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brian, for that overview, and also for sharing a little bit of your story at the top of the call. I didn't know, I had no idea about you and your brother. And again, it speaks to how critical this work is, because generation after generation of young people will be exposed to and suffer from, health ailments that are they're preventable. They're preventable. And this work is so critical to make sure that we can prevent more generations from having things like asthma and other respiratory illnesses and other, diseases that are associated with air pollution, that we can work together to figure out how to make sure that that is not the case. So thank you so much for that.
Great. Thanks, Lamika. Okay, let's let the slides get up here. And in the meantime, I'll introduce myself. So hi, everyone. My name is Julia Luongo. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm staff in OCAP, the Office of Community Air Protection, working on the blueprint. And I also serve as the CARB liaison to Bay Area communities in the program. So we will now talk through some of the changes and new guidance in part 2 of Blueprint 2.0, based on what we've learned in the program so far. And as a reminder, part 2 is more of the nuts and bolts implementation guidance in the blueprint that really builds on the vision of part 1. Okay, so part 2 of the blueprint is organized in the following way. So the first half focuses on the legal foundation and program elements, includes guidance on working together in this program, and guidance on transparency and accountability that's really born from our learnings in this program so far. And then the second half, the right-hand side of the slide here, of the document, it's really split into 2 implementation tracks. So one section is intended for our 19 steering committees that are currently implementing community air monitoring plans and community emissions reduction plans. And then the other section describes new pathways for those 65 plus places, so our consistently nominated communities, to tap into resources and partnerships to support emissions and exposure reduction actions through this program. So the program background section of the blueprint lays out the various program elements that are required by law, and we've included reference to those, to the specific language in statute within the blueprint. So the elements required by law are in blue on the slide, and that includes elements like community emissions reduction plans and community level air monitoring. And then in green on this slide are other program elements that are not explicitly listed in the law, but are within CARB's discretion that allow us to expand our efforts across more communities, such as community-focused enforcement and the guidelines towards usage of community air protection incentive funds, which you'll also hear us call those CAP incentives. So one of the new elements within the program background section of the blueprint that we want to highlight is funding transparency. So we heard from the People's Blueprint and community members engaged in this program call for increased funding transparency. So our draft blueprint now includes a section dedicated to that topic and points to various resources with additional information on funding transparency. One example being our AB 617 budget frequently asked questions document. We also, within the blueprint, reference many tools like CARB's CAP incentives dashboard, and that dashboard breaks down where and how CAP incentive funds are being spent across the state. So as was mentioned previously, our draft guidance, part 2 of it, is organized into these 2 implementation tracks. So one path is for the currently selected communities that includes our 19 steering committees. And the second path is for consistently nominated communities seeking to engage in this program. So we'll first start off talking about proposed guidance for the 19 steering committees. Oh, advanced a couple too many slides there. There we go. So here are some of the blueprint elements supporting SERP implementation across the 18 communities that are developing or implementing SERPs. We want to just highlight these. So some of these elements include ensuring completion of SERPs, which is one of our goals in part 1 of the blueprint. Approval of SERPs by the executive officer through delegation by the board. Some SERPs have taken more than 2 years to get to the CARB board, and we've learned that it's much more effective for CARB staff to engage upfront in the SERP development process to ensure an approvable and strong SERP. So having fewer board meetings for SERPs means that we can use staff resources for more discussion with the board about overall program progress, more engagement in the 65 plus places that we've been talking about today, and more staff resources for needs that we've heard expressed and we've actually touched on today as well. And one of those being facilitating more frequent exchange across communities. And another is program evaluation. So this program has rightly attracted a lot of interest from researchers and community partners who want to assess its effectiveness. The program is in need of a comprehensive evaluation aligned with EJ principles and designed through an inclusive process. So CARB has secured funding to conduct this evaluation through a third party, and that funding did not come from the limited AB 617 funds that we spoke about previously. We'll speak a bit more on some of the governance and tracking and accountability guidance in the next few slides. And something else I want to point out is we support our 19th community in moving from a camp to a SERP. And we also include discussion in Blueprint 2.0 on how to better align camps and SERPs to better work together. So in terms of steering committee governance, we learned from the People's Blueprint and through practice with our steering committees in this program, what elements contribute to a collaborative process. And some of those include community-centered design, skilled facilitation, a co-developed charter, and an accessible process. We've also included examples of some of the promising practices we've seen so far, such as subcommittee structure, for example, that Margot highlighted for the Stockton Steering Committee earlier today. And this draft version of Blueprint 2.0 also includes more detailed guidance and new elements to be considered to be included in steering committee charters on the right-hand side of the slide here. So those are some of the new things related to steering committee governance that are now included in the Blueprint. So we also heard from the People's Blueprint and from our communities a few years into SERP implementation that measuring and tracking the progress of SERPs is vital to transparency and accountability. So while our 2018 Blueprint does include guidance on metrics and tracking, we've updated Blueprint 2.0 to provide more clarity on setting metrics and targets for each individual action in a SERP in hopes of making reporting easier to track and also easier to understand. We have also updated our guidance for SERP reporting, that it should continue annually until all SERP actions are complete. And we have included guidance on the 5th year annual report. So this is the annual report after a SERP has been implemented for 5 years. Our 2018 Blueprint included requirements to set SERP targets for the 5th year of implementation. So that 5th year annual report is an important checkpoint in the progress towards completion of a SERP. Okay, so now we're going to turn to talk about Blueprint elements that support our other implementation track for the 65 plus consistently nominated communities. And those include the 3 pathways that we propose to help support more communities. So here we have the new implementation approaches that we're putting forth in the draft Blueprint, with really an emphasis on those 65 plus places. So these include the use of community air grants to support local community emissions reduction programs. That's the green diamond. community focused enforcement, which is our dark blue diamond, and increased flexibility for use of CAP incentives to allow projects developed in selected communities to be replicated in other communities, and that's represented by the light blue diamond. So community air grants, they're called for by law in the program and are an essential tool for communities who want to participate in local air quality education, in monitoring, and now in planning and prioritization. So to date, over 95 community-based organizations and tribal governments have benefited from these funds. One new pathway is to support communities who want to use a community air grant to develop their own local emissions reduction programs, or what we're calling an LSERP. And this approach is modeled after a project underway in the San Joaquin Valley that's led by 5 environmental justice organizations. And this grant focuses on helping community members understand the various existing and proposed emission reduction strategies already available in CARB-approved SERPs developed by communities in the San Joaquin Valley. So to support the expansion of this new approach that's modeled by Valley Community Coalitions, CARB's 2022 Community Air Grants program requests for applications included a new project type called the Local Emissions Reduction Plan. And this year, we currently have a number of applicants for this type of project. We plan to hold a public process to refine the next cycle of the community air grant requests for applications to learn from partners engaging in this new project type to continue to improve this implementation approach over time. So community-focused enforcement is another pathway we want to highlight for this one for both consistently nominated and selected communities in the program. So our enforcement staff, we're hearing EJ communities call for more enforcement, while our own inspection data showed relatively high compliance rates for mobile sources in EJ communities. So this has really motivated us to work in a different way by working closely with community to better understand what issues are not being addressed and where those gaps are. In a community-focused enforcement approach, CARB staff concentrates investigations and enforcement in areas identified by the community, some of which we do not traditionally enforce. The community priorities are central to developing and implementing targeted enforcement plans. And I will now hand it off to Adriana to talk about community air protection incentives, our third pathway.
Excuse me, I had myself on mute. Thank you so much, Julia. My name is Adriana Moncada Smith, and I'm a member of the CAP incentives team and OCAP. And so now we'll move on to an overview of community air protection incentives. As you've heard earlier, increasing the flexibility of incentives will allow us to provide additional support to projects that help clean up the air in communities, both for those that are selected as well as those that have been consistently nominated. Now, as part of revising the Community Air Protection Blueprint, we're updating the incentive guidelines to better allow Air District to focus on projects that you would like to see in your community. So far, our state's legislature has put about $1.2 billion towards these incentives. So to learn more about CAP incentives, we have provided a link for AB 617 funding FAQ. And so we'll drop that into the Zoom chat as well. Next. Now we'll move on to some of the changes that we're proposing to make to our incentives. Currently, our guidelines provide criteria and guidance for Air District to implement a wide variety of different project categories. And we're proposing to update some of those existing categories as well as add some new ones. Examples of what we've updated updated in the chapters include the schools chapter, We've expanded the scope to focus broadly on protection of all sensitive receptors, not just for school children, but for we're looking to include local community centers, hospital, assisted living homes. And then we've also split up the stationary source and community identified projects into 2 separate chapters to help better differentiate between the two. Next, speaking of new kinds of incentives, air districts have already created a dozen new community identified and stationary source projects for selected communities. And we're proposing to take these successes and make them available statewide by creating new chapters, which include the agency partnerships, which allow for monetary support of partnerships opportunities with other federal, state, and local agencies. We're looking at also creating the vegetative barriers and urban greening projects chapter, as well as the paving, sidewalk, and bike paths chapter. Lastly, we're eager to learn how we in your air district can partner better to help identify the kinds of projects for your community in our upcoming sessions. And with that, I want to thank you for your time, and I will turn it back over to Lamika. Thank you so much.
We're going to close out with some words of wisdom and additional next steps from Deldy and Femi from CARB. All right, I'll kick it to them. Thanks, everybody. I'm excited. Get excited.
In our last minute, you guys can choose between me saying goodbye and thank you, or Femi can give us a dad joke. What do y'all want? Want the dad joke? It'll be a clean one. It'll be a good one. No? Okay, nobody wants a dad joke. All right, I want to thank all of you for being here. You know, Lamika said it well, thought partners, that's what we need right now. As I said earlier this evening, we have the power to really use the potential in 617 to change the way we do business at CARB and hopefully air districts as well, although, you know, we can't speak for them. But we have seen these changes happen as a result of the hard work of communities whose lives we need this kind of work at the community level. So thank you for giving your time tonight. This is not your last shot. We are eagerly excited to get any written comments from you. And we have a docket that's open until July 31st for this version of the blueprint. And then this is all gearing up for us to go to the board in September with the final draft that will be informed by what we're hearing tonight and in other venues. And then we will consider that, the board will consider it in September, late September. And then, like I said, after that, the real work begins of making good on all of the commitments that we're making in the next blueprint. Thank you all.
All right, well, thanks everybody. You got both. If you didn't catch it in the chat, we got the dad joke from Femi, so there it is. And Deldy's closing comments. I'm going to say what's on the slide for those who may be joining by phone. If you would like to contact the CARB team for more information or to request a meeting about the Blueprint 2.0, please email ab617projectliaison@arb.ca.gov. Thank you so much, everybody. This was a great way to kick off the workshops. We look forward to continuing the conversation and building this transformative system together because we need it.